Hey guys, what's going on? Mike the Caveman Cuny here again from Paleo Problem Long Island and MikeTheCaveman.com. And first of all, I'd like to wish everybody a happy 4th of July. Stay safe. But for today's question, since we're all going to be eating lots of artery clogging saturated fat and cholesterol, today's question is, why are your cholesterol levels dangerous? And the answer is, they're not. Roll credits. What, you want more? Alright, fine. We talked about this a little bit during our Bacon as a Health Food episode, but really let's dive into it. So first of all, what are cholesterol's roles? We've talked about it a lot before, but the cholesterol is essential for the production of your cell membranes and cell receptors, as well as the transport of nutrients across the cell membrane. It's essential for the production of those sex hormones. It's essential for vitamin D. It's essential for the production of myelin, which is like the insulation around your neurons in your brain. It's essential for bile acid production. Now, while everyone's concerned about their cholesterol being too high and needing to get onto statins to help lower their cholesterol, or avoiding saturated fat and cholesterol containing foods because they don't want to get heart disease, the problem is that we actually likely have too low. And when we continually take those drugs, it's resulting in a number of factors. So let's take that thought to its logical conclusion. There is a genetic disorder called Smith-Lemli-Opitz syndrome, SLOS, and in it, babies are born with a defect in their ability to produce cholesterol. Now, on the lower end, it's mild dysfunction with missense mutations, but in nonsense mutations, they are fully dysfunctional enzymes, or the enzymes simply don't exist. So they are unable to properly produce cholesterol. What happens to them? Well, first of all, cholesterol is essential for the hedgehog signaling pathway of embryonic development, meaning it's necessary for the regulation of proliferation and differentiation of cells, meaning the baby won't grow properly. Those who have those nonsense mutations, which are either missing the enzymes or have completely dysfunctional ones, they usually end up in spontaneous abortion, so they just don't make it. The ones that have missense mutations, the ones that have slightly impaired due to changes in the nucleotide, those have a whole host of disorders. They have increased autism and mental disorders. They have physical deformations in both the limbs and internal organs. They have digestive issues. They have impaired immune systems, hormonal dysregulation, and visual problems. Like we said, cholesterol is essential for that hedgehog signaling pathway, particularly the sonic hedgehog. Yes, named after that one. Sonic hedgehog signaling pathway, which is essential for the production of the central nervous system in the growing fetus. So without that pathway, without cholesterol, you're going to have demyelinated sheaths, so your neurons aren't going to be properly insulated and you're not going to get adequate transmission of neuronal signals. All of your steroid hormones come through cholesterol by way of pregnenolone, whether they be the adrenal or the sex hormones. That's going to go down. But what does go up is 7-dihydroxycholesterol. Now, the problem is 7-dihydroxycholesterol is more susceptible to lipid peroxidation and systemic oxidative stress, so that can cause more damage. Now, it is a precursor to that vitamin D. We absorb the UV radiation from the sunlight, and that does help with the production of vitamin D. But now if those levels are chronically elevated and we don't have enough cholesterol, well, that vitamin D now can start going up. Now, that shouldn't be a problem, except that in excess, without adequate vitamin A and vitamin K, vitamin D can be a problem. So normally we think vitamin D brings down inflammation, it's great for heart health. Go back to the vitamin D video that I did, and you'll be able to look a little more into that. But vitamin D, one of its jobs is to deposit calcium. Vitamin D sort of acts like insulin does for sugar. Vitamin D takes that calcium and transports it into different places. Ideally, it should go into your bone. But if you have too much of it without enough vitamin K, it can start to calcify your blood vessels. So that's a problem. Now, like we said though, that precursor, that 7-dihydroxycholesterol, is very susceptible to oxidative stress. What do we use to bring down the oxidative stress? Well, we use antioxidants. You know what's a great one? Vitamin A. So if you're getting too much vitamin D without enough vitamin A, that's a problem. We need adequate vitamins A, D, and K to protect ourselves from heart disease. They work synergistically. Quick pop quiz. Where are the best sources of vitamins A, D, and K in our diet? That's right, animal foods. Particularly ones that are higher in fat, right? What do we say they're called? The fat-soluble vitamins. What do they need to be absorbed? Fat. So, if you are avoiding fat and cholesterol, A, you're not going to be properly able to absorb those fat-soluble vitamins, the A, D, and K, and you're going to be missing out on the biggest sources of them. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, oh, vegetables, they have a lot of vitamin A and they don't have too much fat. Right, no. They have precursors. They have the carotenoids. Those are precursors to vitamin A. But the conversion process isn't great and it needs other cofactors. So you're better off getting it from a preformed source. The best sources, pasture-raised eggs, liver, and grass-fed butter. Now, what else do you get from there? Well, you get vitamin K. So all of those are excellent sources of vitamin K. Now, interestingly, what's the best source of vitamin K? Particularly K2. That's the biologically active one. Well, it's actually, the highest source comes from natto. And now, natto is a fermented soy common in Japan. Now, what is it fermented with? If you guessed Bacillus subtilis, you're pretty smart. Good work. Yes, Bacillus subtilis, as found in Megaspore. So if you're eating vitamin K1 from those green leafy vegetables, you're gonna want to take in some Bacillus subtilis. Best place to get it, besides that natto, some Megaspore. So quality probiotics will actually help out with production of vitamin K and dealing with that cholesterol. Now, what else does Bacillus subtilis produce? Well, nattokinase, which is a systemic enzyme that found in Fibrenza, and that one also has therapeutic roles in both heart disease and Alzheimer's. So, backtrack for a second. That Bacillus subtilis, that spore probiotic, that bacteria can help produce vitamin K, and it can help with the production of enzymes that can break down fibrous plaques. So that's just one more reason why Megaspore and Fibrenza are such incredible products. But, getting back to the point, the biggest problem is that we are demonizing the firemen who are coming to put out the fire. You may remember we talked about the fireman's paradox before, right? Because when there's a huge fire, lots of firemen show up. And clearly firemen don't cause fires, so we shouldn't blame the firemen. Cholesterol shows up to that plaque to help put out the fire. Now, what's the common cause of that? Well, insulin resistance. How do we get to insulin resistance? Well, we have excessive insulin release, generally due to excessive sugar consumption. Now, those plaques are more susceptible to bursting, and that's the problem, when they are calcified. What calcifies it? Well, inadequate A and K with excessive D. So if you're taking a lot of vitamin D without that A and K, well, now you can have calcium building up in those plaques that were caused because you caused inflammation to your body, and the cholesterol went there to fix it. So it wasn't the fact that cholesterol was there. The problem was that you had inflammation, and then you didn't get enough nutrients, which caused it to then explode, basically. Now, another problem, though, is that insulin resistance can impair the proper functioning of the thyroid. Thyroid hormone, along with the individual cells, are the biggest regulators of LDL receptors. Now, those LDL receptors are essential for the proper turnover, so that they don't stay in your bloodstream for too long. They get to where they need to go to produce the hormones, or to produce the bile salts, or to produce the myelin sheaths, or to combat that inflammation. They are going out there to do their job. Those LDL receptors are making sure they get cleaned out sooner rather than later. The longer they're in circulation, the more problematic they become. So that insulin resistance can lead to problems with your thyroid, which will lead to decreased LDL turnover. Now, I know I've gone well around the board because there's so much that I could potentially cover. Because, like we said, Frederick Bastiat, I must resort to long, arid dissertations to refute what someone can say in a couple of half-truths. So we are so afraid, fortunately the tide started to turn, but we are generally so afraid of cholesterol that I have to go on these epic rants just to even touch the surface of the problem. The biggest takeaways for today, and there's a lot to take away, but the biggest ones for today: stop fearing cholesterol and saturated fat. You need them to absorb your fat-soluble vitamins, vitamins A, D, and K, and those are essential for preventing heart disease, that's what we're trying to avoid cholesterol for, right? So those are essential. You need those. Without adequate amounts of fat, you're not going to be able to absorb those. You need that cholesterol to produce your hormones, your vitamin D, your myelin to protect your neurons. You need it to produce bile salts so you can digest that fat as well. You need it for your cell membrane function. You need it for so many reasons. Stop being afraid of it. When you replace that fat, generally, you're not replacing it with more protein, you're probably replacing it with more carbohydrate. And if it's simple sugars or lots and lots of starches, excessive amounts of carbohydrate, you're going to lead to insulin resistance, which is going to decrease your ability to recycle LDL, the bad cholesterol. It's going to remain in circulation for longer periods of time, be more susceptible to oxidative stress, and lead to systemic inflammation, which is going to lead to more cholesterol getting released. So, Just stop worrying about high cholesterol. More important than whether your total cholesterol is just high, it's better to look at your HDL to total cholesterol ratio as well as your triglyceride to HDL ratio. You're also going to want to look at other markers of inflammation, such as your fasting insulin, your fasting blood sugar. You're going to want to look at your iron levels. If they are excessively high, that can lead to further oxidative stress. And some other inflammatory markers like HbA1c and C-reactive protein, those can be important as well. But focus on those markers. Don't stress over the doctor telling you that you have high cholesterol. There's so much more context to it than that. Eat real foods, avoid the inflammation, get in those lifestyle factors. That way, the stresses that you have, whether it's lack of sleep or physical stresses, those aren't going to cause more inflammation in your body, which is going to need more cholesterol to be sent out. So, biggest takeaways: eat those real foods, make sure you get enough vitamins and minerals, take care of the lifestyle factors, and you're going to be on your way to having a great and healthy life. Alright guys, you know what to do. Like and subscribe down below, share it with your friends. If you have any more questions, you know where to find me over on Instagram and Twitter at Mike the Caveman, over on Facebook at Paleo Primal Long Island, and of course over at MikeTheCaveman.com. That being said, have a wonderful 4th of July, stay safe, try not to do too much inflammatory damage, and enjoy that steak, grass-fed. I'll see you tomorrow, guys.